even you start your research, and after you have already done your research, and when you start writing literature review. Okay. And as I mentioned to you, in addition to be part of your literature review chapter in your research thesis or dissertation or even paper, you can also write, you can start writing literature review alone as an article. Okay, so I think for those who have not done your research yet, okay, one thing that you can start working is to write. Just think about the topic that you choose, okay, and then just you can say you conduct the literature review, literature search, and as I mentioned to you, when you read, you just record it in the literature matrix together with analytic bibliography, and you work on that literature review first and submit it as the article in your you can article as the publication. That is one thing that you can still do even before you conduct the research. That way you can also practice writing as well. Okay, that is one thing that I would like to encourage, okay, since the beginning for the new researcher as well as the others as well. Okay. Now, after the literature review, then I went onto the methodology section. Okay. But the only thing that, because I'm just looking at writing and I went through, you can say, both qualitative and quantitative research methodology content. Okay. How, you can say, the qualitative methodology section looks like and how the quantitative section looks like. Okay, so and after that we went through research, you can see writing results and or findings, and finally discussion. When I said discussion together with the conclusion as well. Okay, so today what I'm going to share with you is introduction and abstract. You might remember that I told you, because I am doing it not according to the order of a chapter in your dissertation or paper. I'm going through according to what you need to do. Okay, so what does it mean? Both abstract and introduction is the last two. Right. Okay. Now, what I'm going to cover today is number one, what is an introduction? What does an introduction to for in your paper? How important is this? Why introduction and features of a good introduction, structure and phases of introduction. Okay, and do's and don'ts in the introduction. Now, let's look at what introduction is. It's a broad beginning of your paper, right? Because it leads the readers from a general subject area to a specific field of study. Okay, it starts with the general area and narrow it down to the specific field of study. That is where your study is, right? And it establishes the context and significance of your study, and it outlines the structure of the remaining part. That is what the introduction is like. Okay, now in that case, as I mentioned to you, it establishing in order for you to establish the context and significance of your study, what you need to include is what is known about the topic. That means background to the topic and current understanding of the topic. Then after that, the purpose statement. That means research purpose statement, right? That means in the form of the research problem statement, and it must be supported by a hypothesis or a set of questions. Okay, normally based on your research problem statement, we have the purpose of your research followed by the research question you set for your own research. And after that is we have brief explanation of methodology, because the details will be in a methodology section. Now in the introduction, it's a kind of miniature of the whole thesis or the whole paper. Okay, that's why we have everything here. Brief explanation of methodology. That means you briefly state what methodology you use and what are the methods or instruments or tool you use. Okay, and finally you highlight the potential outcome if this research proposal. Okay, you highlight the potential outcomes, and if it's your research thesis or paper, then you included the most important findings of your research. Okay, now let's look at background to the topic. Okay, now what you need to do is, in this part, you identify and describe the history and nature of a well-defined research problem with reference to the existing literature. You may remember when I talk about research problem statement, right? Right? Then in that case, it's all related, you see. The scope and breadth depends on your assumption about the reader's level of prior knowledge as well. Now here in this case, let's say if your research is on certain research problem, but only in the context in your country. For example, in Myanmar, English is the foreign language, not the second language or the first language. Whereas in Malaysia and Singapore, it is a second language, for example. Okay, the context is totally different. In such a case, people may not know about the education landscape of our country. In such a case, you may need to include the background. That means education system of Myanmar, etc. Something like that. Okay, because it depends on that is what I meant. The scope and breadth depends on your assumption about the reader's level of prior knowledge, so that people can see how significant your research is. It can highlight, you can well articulate the research problem statement. The research problem statement that I mentioned to you last week is inside the introduction section or chapter. Okay, it is not. That's why I just try to include. That's why you may hear me repeating this more or less the same thing when I talk about, here, right? The same as, when I talk about research problem statement. Okay, that's why I think, because it's part of the introduction. Now, its scope and breadth depends on your assumption about the reader's level of prior knowledge. One is the root of the problem being studied. Okay, appropriate context of problem in relation to sometimes theory or research and or practice. Sometimes you start this because there is some problem with the practice. As I mentioned to you, when we talk about online learning, this is a general context. Okay, but the problem is in practice. That is unsatisfactory completion rate. That is the real problem, right? Real problem, practical problem. It's not related to theory. But when you look at it here, anyway, you can look at the literature and let's look at it in terms of theory. Is there any problem, right? Is there any research carried out in this area? Okay, so I think these are what you need to include. And the scope and the extent to which previous studies have successfully investigated the problem. Okay, as I mentioned to you, once you have the practical problem and you look at the literature and how much previous study have done, okay, where gaps exist that your study attempt to address, okay, so that it will highlight the significance of your research. It highlights why a research is needed in that area. Okay, next slide, please. Now, how important is an introduction? Because introduction answers the following question. What did I study? Okay, why was it important for me to study it? What had I known before the study and what had not been studied in that area? How will this study contribute, advancing new knowledge or new ways of understanding? Okay, so in that case, your introduction should show what you study, why it is important to study it, and what is known before, what has been known before, and what has not been studied in the area. Then how much, right, my study will contribute. It means that it highlights the, as you can say, significance of your research. Okay, next, please. Now, why introduction? Okay, let's look at from the reader's point of view. Because an introduction answers the following question. What is this? Why should I read it? What do you want me to think about or consider doing or react to this? Now, you may remember, right, when I asked you to conduct literature review, the first thing you need to look at is title. If titles seem to be relevant, continue with the abstract. And if it is, but even then, if you think it's relevant, go to introduction. Why? This is where you know, the introduction tell you what is this research about, why should, the reader read it, okay, something like that. Now, for writers or researcher, introduction answer the following question. What did I study? Why was it important for me to study it? What had I known before the study and what had not been studied in that area? How will this study contribute? Is it advancing new knowledge or new ways of understanding? Okay, that's why that is exactly the reason why when I said when you conduct the literature review, how are you going to ascertain that, sure that the article or the research paper is relevant to your research. That is how you can see, you can touch one after another rather than blindly reading the whole chapter. Okay. Next, please. Features of a good introduction. The first one is a concise, engaging, and well-written introduction. Okay. Every chapter we have introduction, body, and conclusion, right? Now, and another one is a brief and balanced review of pertinent published prior study about the topic in a manner to better understand the research problem. Because you're going to include all the details in literature review section or chapter, in the introduction, what you can include is only a brief and balanced review of pertinent only, very significant published prior study about the topic in a manner to better understand the research problem. The use of brief literature review here is to show what has been known and what has not been studied, to highlight the gaps. Okay. Now, explanation of how your study specifically addresses. After putting that down, you can explain how your study specifically addresses the gaps in the literature or insufficient consideration of the topic. Sometimes people look at the same problem, the same context, but in terms of research methodology or in terms of you can say, participants, or in terms of you can say, factors, maybe you may feel that previous study, whatever they look at is insufficient consideration of the topic or other deficiency in the literature. Okay. Now, after that, noting the broader theoretical, empirical, and or policy contributions and implication of the research. You may remember that in the conclusion as well, right? Because introduction start with general, right, and narrow down to a specific area. That specific area is elaborated in the body of the whole thesis itself. In conclusion, we start with a specific area. Because we discussed the finding of the research, okay? Finding of the research. And at the end, because we open it up again, and in conclusion, we have the kind of from specific area to general area where we addresses the implications of the research and recommendation and everything, but it applicable to, you can say, theory and broader area, or maybe possible application to you can say, to the problems or the professional practices. Okay, now you can see very clearly, right? Introduction start with a general, followed by the specific area you can click on. And in the body, we elaborate that area, and conclusions start with a specific one, followed by general. That is what we need to remember. Now, the next slide, please. Now, phases of the introduction, as I mentioned, if you remember the components, right? Now you can see here. First thing is you are to establish an area of research. How do you do that? First, start with a general statement about the topic, followed by an overview of current research of the subject, highlight of the significance of the research problem. Okay? Now, and another one is identification of the research niche. Because actually here, because we already have the overview of current research and highlight how important the research problem is. This is where you can highlight or reveal a gap in the current research or overseeing existing assumptions following a disciplinary tradition. And this is where you are going to say that, this is where you can state your research problem. Okay? And then after that, sorry, previous. Then after that, this is where, because you have already identified the get, right, and research problem, this is where you are going to occupy that niche, occupy that get by stating the research aim, outline of the key characteristics of your study, description of the important results if you are writing a research paper. It is research proposal, description of potential important results, and after that, a brief overview of the structure of the paper. Next slide, please. Okay, now here in this case, in the introduction, it is very important for you to include the delimitations of the study. Okay, we have limitation and delimitations. In the introduction, we need to include delimitation of the study. That is the initial choices about the broader overall design of the study. For example, right? If you are looking at, for example, unsatisfactory completion rate of the, you can say, online learning courses, for example, it is not possible for you to include everything. Maybe you may want to focus only on one university or maybe one specific course, okay? Because it's not possible for you to get data, which is not possible. Now, here in this case, what you need to do, a declaration that the limitation of the study is a declaration of what your study does not intend to cover. Okay, how do you note that? First thing, the key aims and objectives of your study, where you articulate clearly what you are going to look at, and the research question that you address, and the variables of interest. If it is quantitative one, the variable of interest means what will be the independent variable and what will be the dependent variables, and the research methods, the time period your study covers, any relevant alternative theoretical framework that could have been adopted. Okay. Then after that, as I mentioned, your research is always choices that you make, but you make sure you justify your choice. Okay, that's why when you are picking and choosing certain context only, certain area only, then you justify why. Sometimes because of the time constraint, sometimes even if you are given unlimited time, it is not possible for you to collect data. Even if you can collect all the data, analyzing data may be difficult. Okay, that's why you must justify your choices. Okay, now as I mentioned to you, because actually when you first write the introduction in the beginning of your research journey, right? As long as you have all include these, I think fine. But the thing is that after you have conducted your research, right? This is when I think after you have written the finding and result and discussion and conclusion. For me, I did the same thing. I rewrite my introduction together with conclusion because I've opened two chapters side by side, right? Because actually from the results and everything, I write the conclusion, and looking at my introduction again, I make changes, all the necessary changes, okay? It happened that not only introduction, I also need to make changes to literature review. Why? Because in the beginning, I may have included not all literature reviews. Some, I think thought that I thought that it is not relevant. It was not relevant. But after seeing the results and everything, and when I analyze and interpret and everything, coming up with discussion, oh my, some of the literature that I have, I do not use or I just left, they are so relevant, and this is the finding that I have never expected before. So in that case, that's why I think even if you have written introduction several times, okay, once you finish with the conclusion, what you need to do is you can just work on the introduction and conclusion side by side after your main part of your paper. And as I mentioned to you, you may want to review your literature chapter as well. Now, what you need to do is, in the introduction, use keywords in the first few sentences, okay? Let's say, for example, just now when I said online learning, for example, keywords, right? Now, completion rate, attrition rate, etc. These are all related to, you can say, whenever we like to evaluate or analyze the some kind of courses, okay? Teaching courses. Now, don't use right? Whenever you describe keywords, normally we need to explain or define these keywords, but don't use general dictionary definition of keywords. If your paper is on linguistic, then you can see the key terms, definition of key terms. You can take it from the specific, for example, linguistic dictionary or from the literature review itself. That means use authoritative definition or subject-specific dictionary or encyclopedia definition. Okay, that's all for introduction today. Okay, next slide. I think I have some more. Okay, what have we learned? What have we learned about introduction? Okay, let me summarize this very quickly. Okay, in your introduction, what you need to do, you introduce the general topic, and you right, and then provide your area and a brief overview of literature, right, to highlight the gaps, and also you can say highlight why a study is needed, a research is needed to carry out. Then after that, what you need to do is, you're right, you need to state your aim or objective, your research question, etc. Okay, and a brief, you can say statement of your research methodology. Again, briefly indicate the justification of the research as well, plus delimitation of your research. Okay, and again, include why you choose such a thing. Okay, and only after that, if it is research proposal, include potential findings and how your finding contribute to the theory, practice, and the context or community, etc. Okay, next slide. If we knew what we were doing, it would not be called research, would it? That is how research journey is like. In the beginning, you seem like, oh, I will just give you my own example. After I finish my master, right, I would like to look at Bazamali, okay? And I know what I'm doing. I thought that I knew what I'm doing, okay? I went to NUS, and then after that, okay, before even my supervisor told me or something like that, I went all over Singapore to figure out where I could collect data. Because it's used in market, even I went to the wet market and everything. I went all over Singapore, to try to note down the situation there. Okay. But the thing is that after the first year, after I finished my PhD qualification exam, I get my research proposal, the committee like it, but still, after 2 years, it seems that I got lost. Okay? I don't know how to continue. But anyway, I just struggle. What happened is a funny thing. Now, one thing that I would like to share with you as well, to have friends. When you're attending PhD or master, unlike when you were young or you just work hard alone so that you could stand first in the class, you ace the class. No, there is no such thing in postgraduate study. For me, I don't care. I share everything with everyone. Whatever I learn, I will share. Okay, that's my policy. But what really happened is that that is the good thing, because sometimes you got lost in the middle. What happened was that you complain, just complain. At least you feel better. At least you feel better. In some cases, you yourself couldn't see the way out. But when your friend mentioned just one word, that will help you. Because when I wrote Bazamali data, I hate phonology. I hate phonology. I include all the grammar, syntax, and everything. Okay. But I would not like to include phonology because I don't want to include, even though I have all the data. I have already analyzed the data. And then one day I was, we a group of PhD students met. Okay. And there is one student, a PhD student, she was senior. But the thing here is her special area is in phonology. And okay, I complained. I said I would not like to include it. And she said, you must include it. Now I do not know how I could arrange it. Okay. And she said, Kim, you have been doing that. It's easy. And she said, this. Oh, mine. That night I sat down because I have all the data. Okay. I finished that chapter and phonology, but within one night. Of course, editing and proofing comes later, but at least I got it done. Not because I was that good. You see, the guidance came from a friend. You see, that's why I think these are what I would like you to think it. That's why don't be shy to talk about it with your friends. Even if something to be proud of or something, it doesn't matter. Okay, share with everyone so that you can get some idea. You will never know. For me, I was just my supervisor forced me include the phonology chapter. I look at him and I'm a bit stubborn, okay? At the same time I'm rebellious, to tell you the truth. That's why I would not like to include that. But I was just complaining to a group of PhD student friends, and then that is when I think she said, that's great. Just did it. Okay. So I think this is what we must remember. When you are a PhD student, help one another. Okay, you will never know. It's very productive. Okay, now let's move to abstract writing. Okay, like introduction and okay, wait, okay, yeah. Now, I would just like to ask you before I talk about abstract, what makes a busy scientist or researcher decide to read a paper? Is it the title, or the reputation of the authors, or the abstract, or the references? Answer in the chat box quickly. Your answer A or B, or C or D. Okay, one has already answered. Okay. A and C. Okay. Okay. Now, what do you think, guys? Some of you answer C. Some of you are very, very clever. They put A and C. Some A. If you were, if you were a very busy researcher, which one, which makes you decide to read a paper? Okay. Okay. Because as I mentioned to you, okay, yes, most of you are correct, abstract, but right? Because yes, title can tell you some information, but as I mentioned to you, how we arrange the title, right? That sometimes the title may or may not reflect the research topic itself because we suffer quite a lot. We suffer quite a lot. Sometimes the title is it's misleading, right? Misleading. When I look at it, oh, maybe it must be relevant, and I would look at it, oh no, right? That's why I think because abstract is the one. Yes. Okay. Now here, now whenever we look at the research article, how the research published in you can say company would accept right the article, or maybe conferences, right. If you look at title and abstract, title must be simple, attractive, and interesting enough to lead the reader reading. Both title and abstract, right, must be simple, attractive, because sometimes title is attractive, but there is not much content in it. Okay, but anyway, Once they see the title, of course, it's attractive, then they continue to read. But of course, not only they do not decide it only with title. More important one is the abstract one, because it clearly highlights new advances, right? Produced by that research, and also significance of the study, right? That is exactly the reason we continue to read the rest of the paper. So when I ask you, when you conduct the literature review, start with the title, see whether it's relevant or not. But sometimes it's seen a little bit, but we are not quite sure, right? That's why we continue to read the abstract, because normally the content of the abstract should tell you about the research itself within the limited number of words. Okay, let's move the next one. Okay, now what are we going to cover? What is an abstract? Why abstract? Types of abstract, do's and don'ts, the writing style, and the process. Look at it, okay? Okay, let's look at what is abstract. You all know about it, right? Condensed version of the most important information of your article. Okay, now how is it? It's only one single paragraph. When some of you, when they submit the abstract, some of you submit it in 2 paragraphs. No, it should be only one single paragraph, a well-developed single paragraph of approximately 250 words. It depends on, okay, now when I put down 250 words, okay, that is the general one. It depends on the, let's say, any kind of international conference, or, you know, some of they have different word limitation, okay? So if it is 250 word, what does it mean? If you're using A4 paper, and if you are using double spacing, 250 words is 1 page. Okay, 1 page. Now it's fully self-contained. That means everything is in and makes sense without any reference to outside source or to your paper or article. Okay, now one thing that you must remember, for us, for social arts and social sciences, for ELT papers and everything, abstract is in words. But 4 or 5 years ago, when I provide training to the research, because our University of Technology, so I think engineering faculty, they told me that now engineering, they start the abstract is in graphic. The abstract is in graphic, okay? So even sometimes the proposal is in graphic, okay? So I was not quite sure whether my research training will be that useful for the engineering students or engineering researcher. But anyway, let's move, okay? At least the chapters will be useful. Now, what does an abstract do? It provides enough key information of your research study that enable your reader to decide whether it is worth reading the rest of the paper. This allows you as a researcher to determine whether this paper is relevant to your research study. You may remember, let me write literature review, look at title and abstract, right? Okay, now why abstract? Right? According to Belcher, right? Abstract as a tool for success. For those who are submitting papers to the art journal, research journals, right? Abstract is a tool for success because it solves problems, a diagnostic tool, help clarify, draft, or revise your article. Because using the abstract, right, you can help clarify, draft, or revise your article. And it will help you connect with the editors. Because when you submit your paper, they look at only abstract first. When they think then they will continue reading your paper. That's why your abstract will get you found by the editors and publishing company, getting read, getting cited. Okay, so I think these are what we need to remember. Yes. No, abstract, I think now, look at it here. Types of abstract, there are altogether 4 types. Critical abstract, descriptive abstract, informative abstract, and highlight. What does it mean? Okay, now here, critical abstract, right, normally between 400 and 500 words. Addition of a judgment or comment about its validity, reliability, and completeness compared to another related study. Okay? Descriptive one is 100 words or less only. The purpose, method, and scope without judgment, results, or conclusion. Okay? Now for informative one, no more than 300 words. Purpose, method, scope, main argument, result, evidence, conclusion, and recommendation. That is more to do with the kind of abstract that we usually write, informative one. Okay? The highlight ones to attract readers' attention with incomplete and leading remarks is rarely used in academic writing. Okay? So in such a case, what we have been using mostly informative one, normally here we put it down no more than 300 words, but you can see purpose, method, scope, main argument, result, evidence, conclusion, and recommendation. You can see very clearly, okay? But critical one is totally different because addition of a judgment or comment about its validity, reliability, and completeness compared to another related study. Okay, that's why the purpose is totally different. Okay, now let's next. Now, what are the fundamentals of the abstract? Okay, we have already seen clarity, brevity, and accuracy. What do you mean by brevity? Short and sweet, because there you can write only about 250 words. We do not have much space, much luxury to include so many things. It should be short and sweet, use concise and precise language. Okay, now accuracy, what does it mean? Include the same but brief information of your paper. I have already told you both abstract and introduction are the miniature of your whole paper. Okay? Abstract is within 250 words. Introduction is one chapter. Think about it. So you need to include the same information but very brief information of your paper. Okay? So in that case, right, accuracy means it must be accurate, exactly the clarity, all your language must be clear and comprehensible to everyone as well. Okay? Next, please. Now, writing style, as I mentioned to you, write it last. That Bletcher recommends otherwise. For him, he would recommend us to write the abstract first, but I don't like it. For us, I think after we have done with everything, right, then we can have the whole picture, right? Only then we can write an abstract, okay? Of course, for the research that you have done, in order for you to send that paper for the publication, that is totally a different story. You have everything. So I think based on your research, you would just like to use part of your research because within one article, you may not be able to cover all your findings. If your research is a PhD research, in such a case, you have already thought it, and then you would like to include, let's say, one major finding only. Of course, in that case, you can write your abstract first. What you would like to include, put it there. Only after that, you write your, as you can see, different section of your research paper. Okay, it depends on how you would like to do. Now, abstract writing, you use concise, that means brief but accurate, complete sentences, and use past tenses. But now again, some of the research, you can say, publishing company, they have the directions, what to use. But for me, right, as an English teacher, because we are reporting the research that we have conducted, that's why definitely we will use the past tense, right? So with research, with regard to research and everything, I would use past tense. Of course, if it's general truth, right, among the community or something like, of course, for that we use present tense. But whatever is related to our research, it should be in the past tense. Now, normally people used to say that because research is very objective, right? We keep a distance between the researcher and the research itself, research that we carry out itself. So it should be objective and impersonal. So we normally use passive right to show the this kind of distance. But in abstract, this is what is recommended. Use active voice when possible, though passive sentences may be required. Okay, because actually time has already changed. Before, it must be objective. Now, these days, they would like us to claim our ownership, right? That's why I think it's changing. That's why I think we need to just check what is trendy and see, right, what we need to do. Now, use key phrases or words that reflect the nature of your research study, okay? Because this is what we can do. Now, next, please. Do's and the don'ts, okay? Okay, let's start with don'ts, okay? Don't just introduce your topic. Don't write an abstract that reads like a plan. Okay, it's not a plan. Okay, it should be an argument. Don't report your data without an argument or conclusion. Even though you can write only 250 words, you can't just say A is equal to B. You need to argue that A is equal to B with the evidence. Okay, and support from your finding, etc. Okay, next, please. Now, don't include lengthy background information in the abstract. Okay, you do not have enough space. Right? Remember, my chapter on Myanmar English, right? That one when I started writing, I wrote the background information 3-4 sentences. It's a lot. That's why editor asked me to cut it. Okay, so I need to rewrite it. That's why I have already suffered. Okay, so I don't include lengthy background information or don't include references to literature within the abstract. Don't write incomplete sentences. It must be grammatical and complete sentences. Don't include abbreviations, jargons, and terms that general audience may not know. Because especially when you are submitting the abstract to the international conference, okay, here in this case, what is really happening is that those who are looking at your abstract and choose, they may or may not know your area well. So including abbreviation without explanation, jargons and terms, right? You use those that are common to everyone. Okay, that's why don't use abbreviation, jargon, and terms that general audience may not know. Don't include anything you do not need to understand the article. Okay, it's not a rubbish bin, okay, trash bin. What you need is a kind of treasure box, okay? That you can run away with. Now, don't include images, table, and illustration. I have a kind of asterisk. Why? I've already told you, right? Now, the engineering abstract is only graphic one. That's why this one is not relevant to engineering abstract, okay? Next, please. Next, please. Now, here are 4 ingredients of the abstract recipe. You need to include motivation. What do we mean by motivation? What problems did you study? And why is it important or interesting? What is new? What is new mean? Right? Because people have done a research. And what is new about your research? Now, you need to include methodology. Of course, what method did you use? Result. You cannot include all the results. Okay? You can include your principal results and finding. What were your principal results of finding? And conclusion, what conclusion have you drawn from your result of finding? What is or are your arguments? Okay, these are the main ingredients of the abstract recipe. Now let's look at some example, because sometimes without seeing the examples, it is really difficult for you to see. This one is Jennifer's paper, PhD paper, okay? So you can even download it from Scholar Bank at NUS repository. This is an ethnographic study that seeks to understand the literature world of children from diverse familiar backgrounds, but at present living in one particular residential home in multi-ethnic Malaysia. Given its institutional context, this study has 2 broad aims. First, to explore the notions of power and/or equity that are interrelated to the construction or negotiations of identity amongst children in the home as they learn to become socially adept, accepted, or even highly regarded amongst one another. Secondly, the study considers a wider framework for community involvement and suggests an alternative to the general assumption that acknowledges the central role of parents in children literacy development. In conclusion, literacy and residential care wears many caps. It plays a role in helping build personal relationship, aids in school readiness and scholastic achievement and develop self-identity. Okay, because hers is the ethnographic study. Now the next one is from their world, the perspective of South Vietnamese military in their own worlds. Okay, so I would like you to read it on your own. Okay, now if you look at it here, I put it in different colors. Okay, those in green are motivation or significance. Despite the vast research by American on the Vietnam War, little is known about the perspective of South Vietnamese military, officially called the Republic of Vietnam Armed Forces. Okay, this is highlighting the gap. The overall image that emerges from the literature is negative, lazy, corrupt, unpatriotic, apathetic, soldier with poor fighting spirit. This is the kind of problem statement. And this one here, the study recovers, right, some of the South Vietnamese military perspective for an American audience through qualitative interview methodology is there with 40 RVNAF veterans now living in St. Joe, Sacramento, and Seattle, home to 3 of the top 5 largest Vietnamese American communities in the nation. Okay, now if you look at it here, here are the, you can say, findings, right? An analysis of these interview yields the veterans' own explanation that complicate and sometimes even challenge three widely held assumptions about the South Vietnamese military. RVNF was riddled with corruption at the top ranks, hurting the morale of lower ranks. Okay, now if you look at all the red one, these are the findings. Now, if you look at it here, now you can see very, very clearly the kind of, you can say, implication of the research to the larger area. Okay, now let's move to the next one. Optical response of realistic electron in the polar. Now, if you look at it here, I try to include the example from different fields. Okay, so you can read it on your own. Okay. You can see very clearly, you can active voice, right? The use of active voice as well. We perform, right? They take the ownership here. Okay, next slide. And you can see they also use present simple tense. So it depends on the kind of, you can say, convention set by the respective journals. Next one, please. Now, I'm just trying to give you the you can say, identifying these you can say, articles. This is motivation, right? The next one, what do you think is the methodology? Okay, the next one, this one is the results of finding. Now, the last one is the kind of conclusion or maybe implication of the research finding itself. Okay. Now, how do we write the abstract? Let's look at the process of writing. Okay, what you need to do is, first thing, you take whole sentences or key phrases from each section or each chapter. For example, a literature review or introduction or whatever, right? Put them in sequence that summarizes your paper. Revise or add connecting phrases, signposting word to make it cohesive and clear. Just let me give you, for example, take one whole sentence of key phrases from each section. For example, in the literature review, for example, right, in the introduction, you give a kind of overview of that literature review section. Okay, so in that case, that sentence can be included, and maybe in some cases, maybe you may want to include some sentences from the conclusion of the literature review, because this is a kind of brief overview of what you have done. Okay, and you include some most important, as you can say, uh, you know. Now, another one is put, methodology as well. Normally, for the introduction and conclusion, you summarize what methodology you use. That's why I think these are the best places for you to take out some sentences, okay? And what you need to do, put them in sequence that summarizes your paper: motivation, methodology, findings, and conclusion, okay? Revise or add connecting phrases, signposting word to make it cohesive and clear. Check, after that, check whether this is well aligned with your paper, okay? Add it again for smooth flow of idea and accuracy, okay? Now, making an argument, because sometimes when you write it, it's not kind of summary of, even though it's a miniature of your paper, okay? It doesn't mean that it's just a summary, okay? Even though we label it abstract, it must form a kind of argument. Now, there are altogether four options, okay? I would like you to put down in the chat box which one makes a good argument. I want to tell you about a new book I'm reading. Number two, the purpose of this paper is to analyze, right, this novel. Okay, now, this paper uncovers what we can learn about the post-colonial experience from this and that novel. Now, number four, this novel aid our understanding of the post-colonial experience by detailing how and John's British education increasingly alienates her from her mother. Okay, answer in your chat box. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Okay. That's great. Congratulations. You all got correct. 4. Now let's look at it again. We have 1 and 2. Which one is a good argument? In this article, I give an overview of the issue of Koreans in Japan from the Japanese colonial period to present. This article asserts that the lower position of Koreans in Japan from the Japanese colonial period to the present was shaped by the decolonization process, the division of South and North Korea, and the contradictory policies of the Japanese government towards Koreans in Japan. 1 or 2? Okay, 2. Okay, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2. Okay, now when you look at it here, right, you can see very clearly, right, which one makes a good argument. Okay, I would like you to have a look at the writing itself so that you can just, emulate what you have seen. Okay, now next one. Which one? This article reviews factors that facilitate or hinder successful coping with HIV, including pre-existing psychological functioning, medical health status, coping with the challenges posed by the HIV positives. Okay, which one? Now this time around, some wrote 1, some 2. In the previous slide, everyone came with the same answer. Why? What happened? What happened? Okay. Now, what really happened is I understand why people choose one first. This article reviews factors that facilitate or hinder success. When you look at it here, it seems like it's easier to understand it. Okay. For number two, there is an argument, but when we look at this article, the abstract for us outsider, it is not that readily comprehensible. Okay, maybe that is the reason why people choose number one, or maybe because it's longer, that's why you choose one. Which one do you think a good argument? Okay, I will leave it as that. Okay, I will give you answer later. Okay, let's move to the next one. Think about it. Okay, now here, right? Now let's look at it here. This one is from World Englishes, okay? Andy Kirkpatrick is used to work in Myanmar before 1988. No, is it 1988 or 1997? Okay. The roles of English within and between the many of the countries which make up Southeast Asia are increasing, and English is constantly being used and negotiated as a mutual means of communication for Asian multilinguals for whom English is an additional language. It is timely, therefore, to consider ways in which these Englishes have been developing along with the role English is currently playing. Areas worthy of investigation include the influence of language contact and the motivations for the presence of non-standard forms in these new varieties of English. Given the recent research review in this paper, the criteria by which the use of non-standard forms are classified as characteristic of the particular variety need to be revised. The paper will conclude by considering whether the role of English as a lingua franca in the region has reached its end and whether regional language education policy is likely to allow the languages of Asia to thrive. Okay, now here, let's look at it. Research is seeing what everybody else has seen, but thinking what nobody else has thought. So I would say that even when you are teaching, right, we have problems and issue. All the teacher, every teacher see that, okay? But for those researcher, right, they think in the way that no other teacher has thought. That is the difference between researcher teachers and just teachers. Okay. So in that case, even though they're looking at the same thing, but the way that they think is different. That is that differentiate between normal teacher and researcher teacher. Okay. With that, I think I would like to end it here. Now, let's look at it here, the references, so that you can also look at in detail. Okay. Now, the next one, I think we have something at the back. Okay, what have we learned? Okay, first thing, we start with the writing process. After that, literature review, conducting the literature review and writing the literature review. And methodology section, result finding, discussion, and abstract. Okay, and with that, I would just like to conclude here because actually, okay, one thing that I would just like to tell you that is because there are I know that some of the participants, they have the research background. There are some who are really interested in research, but they haven't started the research journey yet. There are some who has done something, who have something, but still, I think that's why when I conduct this workshop, for some people there's some kind of gap. Okay, I could feel that, but we are thinking of. I think we can just stop sharing the slides now. right? We are thinking of conducting, if possible, okay, maybe face-to-face, right? Research methodology workshop. I don't know. I'm just thinking aloud, you see. So teacher may want to say.
Yes, we are.
Um,
Sorry, okay, I cannot talk much today because I've lost my voice. But we have been thinking that because there's a lot of interest from the participants, and we are very, very happy to see all of you, your enthusiasm and your dedication in this research workshops. And from day 1 to day 4 today, we are thinking of having in-person workshops and courses as well. So, but we can do it if it is in person. The challenge is we can do it only locally in the country. So those international participants, you have to join us in person in our country, or okay, someday soon, okay, we can meet together. But right now, okay, we are thinking of a lot of challenges. The first thing is if we are doing it in person, those who are in this country can join us, but those who are not from here, you may join us later from the recording. But we still can't decide yet. But whatever we do, we are going to keep you updated on Facebook. And so please stay tuned and we'll make announcement for the upcoming webinars and training. But so far, we are very happy to have you here, and we are very happy to see your enthusiasm and interest in this research methodology and research writing. So, teacher, if you have finished or do you have something more to say? I think there are some questions or comments from there.
questions?
Yeah,
Okay.
from the participants. Okay. Firstly, I have seen quite a lot of comments from Professor Dr. Tessie Ong from the Philippines.
Yes.
So Dr. Ong, do you have anything to say? You can have your mic on and talk to Dr. A personally. And later we'll give the turns to other participants as well. Sorry. Dr. Tessie Ong, are you stay with us?
I think she has been sending the
Yeah,
chat, and I'm
yeah,
not quite sure whether.
yeah, yeah. I have seen quite a lot of comments from her, and they are really good. And it is a good indicator that the workshop, the webinar is very engaging. All the participants are engaged, and they have lots of questions and comments. And this is a very good indicator, showing the interest, the high level of interest from the participants. So this is the Q&A time. And if you have questions and comments, just, okay, please feel free. You can also make criticism if you have things that you think there are things that we should improve on. If you are not very happy, not very clear, yes, please feel free. Yes, it's open.
Yes,
Yeah, because academic field, no one is perfect. And we know that we need to learn from you. We want to learn from you. Yes.
it's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anything that you have in mind? Okay,
Yeah.
Neely. Okay. Is there any limitation on the word count or page number for the master and PhD thesis? Yes. Each and every university, they have that kind of limitation of words. Okay. In our time for master, if I remember correctly, 20,000 words. Okay. But for PhD one, 80,000 words.
Yeah.
Okay. But
Somewhere around that. Sorry.
it depends on the university. Okay. They
Yeah.
have that, they set their own limits.
Yeah.
Okay. I will tell you secretly. It's not secret anymore. For my PhD thesis, it exceeded the word limit. Okay. So what I did was my research methodology was in the appendix. If you download my research paper, PhD thesis, Bazaar Malay History, Grammar, and Context. You can download it from Scholar Bank from NUS, okay? I did not have any choice because I would not like to cut down the word as well because my area is quite broad, and my supervisor said include it in the appendix. Okay, so the report itself is all findings. Okay, divided into 3 subsections: grammar, part one, part two, history, start with history, followed by grammar, followed by content language features. And methodology section is all in appendix. And interview data and all the transcript and everything, they were included as the appendixes. Okay. So but still you need to obey that. You need to abide by the word limitation. Okay. Let's say if it is 20,000 words, for example, maybe you can exceed about 5-10%, not more than that. Okay, but please remember, the word limit covers only the report itself. It does not include the reference lists or appendixes. Okay. Okay, now the next session. Normally, they do not put down page number. They just put down word numbers. Okay. Okay. Now I think Desi,
And Dr.
Dr. On, she asked
Yes
me
po.
because actually,
She has raised her
Yes po.
hand.
Yes po,
yes,
madam. Okay, my
yes,
microphone is now behaving a little better. Okay.
it's okay.
You know, I have so many inquiries there, madam. Could you react on them? I am also a writer, a research writer. Okay, for those who are writing thesis and dissertation. That's why I have lots of inquiries which I would like to be clarified because I have been meeting people. They insist on those points that I stress there in the chat box, but I seem
Yep.
to disagree with them most of the time. And then if I ask them to justify, defend their side, they could not. But in my mind,
Okay.
I would like to know, what caused them to express those things that I disagree with them. May I request you, madam, to kindly react on those points that I have written in the chat box.
Yes. When I was just, presenting, I saw your chat pop up, and I think, yes, let me just look for it. The first thing I think here, I think the first thing I could see that why restrict the number of words in the abstract to 250, as it depends on the number of words, it depends on the number of variables under study. Kindly justify your restriction. Okay, this is not my restriction, okay, but this is generally accepted one. Again, it depends. I have already told you because I think that I didn't answer that question because in the next slide, after I told you there are 4 different types of abstract, and different types of abstract vary in their word limit as well. So it depends on what you are, as you can say, looking at. That's why, and at the same time, you can say, some journals would not mind exceeding that word limit. Sometimes some journal, I'm so sorry to say that, they look at who wrote the article, and they wouldn't mind for these people, even if it's longer abstract. But in most cases, for the new researcher, I think they would look at the length of the abstract itself. Okay. Because actually the thing here is that I think there may be some, I couldn't remember. For the time being, I cannot remember very clearly, but I seem to have read in one of the book why they have that word limitation, 250 words. Okay. Long ago, if I remember correctly, they have that kind of research. And then I think they have the limit so that people can look at it for the you can see when I put down busy scientist or researcher. If you allow people to write as many words as possible in the abstract, it is not abstract at all. Okay? You may remember that we just need to include the, as you can say, include the methodology. Okay? And methodology and only the most pertinent or significant finding. Now, one thing that when you say you have a lot of a number, if you have, it depends on the number of variables. I can understand very clearly, but I'm just wondering, when you write an article, are you going to include all your findings in one paper? For me, if you are carrying out a kind of, big research, I would write several different articles. Okay? One article, some findings, one article, some finding, we'll just divide it accordingly. Okay? So that we can get more papers at the same time. It's more focused in that sense. I hope that that satisfactorily answer your question, Dr. Ong.
Okay, thank you, Madam.
Okay,
I
now
still have
next.
more questions
Oh, yeah, I'm
in
going
the
to
chat
look at it,
box.
okay?
Thank
Yeah,
you, Madam.
because the first one, if I remember correctly, that this is a number of words. This is what first pop up, okay? Now requirement, okay, reason addition. Okay, need to be cited when just changing somewhat and adding very little new concept and words. Just changing the date of publication and cover design. Yes, I totally agree. I totally agree. But the thing here is that some of the research traditions are a bit, you can say, questionable. I feel that way as well. Because the research trend is like this. Sometimes the people follow like crazily on one topic for about 20 years. Then after that, okay, the trend stops and then they follow another trend. But fortunately or unfortunately, for example, if you would like to look at the research topic that is trending 20 years ago, okay, it may be really difficult for you to find very recent literature. I totally agree with that. But that is the kind of, you can say, requirement. If I remember correctly, I think because actually when you carry out research, it takes about 3 years, right? Some very few research student, PhD student, when they submit the research thesis or dissertation after 3 years, by the time they submit, maybe within a month or two, new research came in. Sometimes, when you submit one research thesis, right, what happened was that maybe one of the examiners' work came out, but you didn't cite. Okay, when the examiners, you can say, feedback came in, they will say that, why don't you cite, your research article, the reference list is not recent or current. That's why I think there is a kind of requirement by the university or research committee saying that the research, you can say, the literature review or reference list must be not more than older than 6 years. Let's say if you're submitting your paper in 2023 minus 6, what does it mean? It is not been, it should be 2017 onwards. Okay. What does it mean? But still, as I mentioned to you, okay, you need to include these recent and current one to show that you have already looked at, you have the comprehensive list of literature relevant to your research. Okay. Without including the recent one, how can you justify you have already covered what has been done in your area? Okay? When you identify what has not been done, but maybe possibly because you haven't done that enough to cover the recent literature. These are the questions that they might raise. But in reality, as I mentioned to you, there may be cases that, right, the the topic that you are looking at, the most recent one are before 2016. That can happen as well. But you can top it up with maybe because this is the old research problem. Now, in the recent years, there are problems, but it's not, no one has done it, but some of the documentation or things like that highlight that issue. That's why we need to have it, look at that problem with a fresh eye or from the fresh perspective. You can justify that as well. Okay? So when the examiner read your literature review well, and you justify why only these, not, you do not cover the reason ones, but at least the documentation dated, recent date, the documentation with recent date, at least give, highlight that, there is the problem there. But no recent research has been found to address the issue. Okay, so I think you need to justify that as well. In most cases, I think given the online publishing and everything, I think you can definitely find the recent and current literature review. I hope that, yeah, I know those who are making money, yes, they have one after another edition, but sometimes it's the same thing, but we can't do that. We do not have any choice. So sometimes I would just put different publication years, including the number of edition. Okay, now another
Excuse
one.
me, madam. Actually,
Yes.
I could see that they are just after, the purchase of, let's say, the books. They would like you to consider recent ones because of business purposes. That is what I, feel about it. Because I've been encountering speakers, no? Our research speakers expressing about that. If I question them, they could not answer me. That's why up to this time, I'm still very not really clarified what is really the justification for prescribing that, only those recent editions should be considered, because none of the resource speakers were able to answer me when I encountered them and asked about, their prescription. They could not answer me.
For me, I am clear about it. Thank you. Because for me, because the purpose of the research, if you can see here, the purpose of the literature review is up, right? Your literature review should cover your understanding and development of the topic in history. How much has been done, okay? Without including the recent publication. I'm not referring to the, let's say, methodology, textbook, and everything, because they have, yes, one after another edition of the same book, some only very few, as you can say, revision done, but still, I think, but I'm not referring to these, but I'm referring to the, as you can say, papers on, the research paper, right? That are relevant to your own topic. Okay, so it is not the kind of, you can say, monetary interest or something like that, but the main issue is plain to see, because you are contributing something important to the theory or the topic itself. But whether you are contributing new or the old one, how are you going to justify or show or explain? Okay, only with the recent, review of the literature, which is current and, you can say, recent, you will be able to justify not enough has been done in that area. And I'm going to take that study just to fill that gap. Okay, that is exactly the reason why we need to include that literature, which is recent and current. Okay, even though I understand like methodology books and things like that, all these, but author, they write one after, they publish one after another edition, sometimes nearly every year. I understand fully. But I'm looking at not that these references, but I'm looking more at the references of the research, okay? Relevant research. Okay, now let me just have a look at some more.
Madam, excuse me, another point. It's about what you have mentioned, no? When you quoted
Yes.
Albert Einstein. Okay, that
Mhm.
you don't conduct research when you already know. I beg to
Yeah.
disagree with you because we
Yeah.
conduct research not just because we do not know. We do it to confirm what we know. Because sometimes
Yeah.
we have in mind that what we know is correct. But when you do research and try to find out more about it, you will discover that you are not correct. So it is
Yeah.
not just to know, but to confirm what we know. So I could
Yep.
see that the quotations of the two, okay, personalities that you quoted, they are in contradict to one another.
Yes. Sometimes research is like that. In some cases, you do some research. As I mentioned to you when I explain, I compare this with my own experience itself. In the beginning, as you mentioned, right, I seem to know what I was doing. Okay? So I knew what I was doing. That's why once I reached Singapore, I went all over Singapore to figure out where I could collect data, etc. And I did manage to collect data. But after 1.5 year or second year or 1 year, I mean, I got lost. I got lost. So a research journey is something like that. Okay. So but I'm referring to no, I'm referring to the life of the inexperienced researcher. Okay. Especially for those who work on their master or PhD thesis. It happened a lot. But once you are experienced, then that is totally different. As you mentioned, okay, you look at a problem or issue, then you have some kind of potential answer to your problem. Okay? You did carry out research, and sometimes you confirm, right, your potential answer to the research question. Sometimes you discover that what you assume is totally wrong. Okay, it's quite normal. Okay, when I use the quotation here, sometimes the quotation reflect those who are inexperienced. Okay, so I think yes, whenever we look at one sentence or two sentences, we interpret it in different ways based on our own experience, everything. Thank you very much, Dr. Ong.
Thank you, Madam. You're so great. So expert. I hope to go to your country, huh? Will you have that
Please.
sponsorship to shoulder the expenses going to your country for that invitation that you expressed out earlier?
Me. Now, this one I cannot answer the question, May.
I really want to see
Mm.
you personally, Madam,
Yeah.
because you're
Oh
so
my God, you can
expert
see
in
it
that
right
field
now.
of research.
You can see it right now.
I
You can see
prefer
me
to
right
see
now.
you, okay, personally, personally.
Oh no.
Maybe sometimes we can meet each other in conferences. Yeah. So yeah, maybe we'll keep in touch, and you know now how to get us. And we are here at MMT SOAR, and you can contact us. For example, if you have conferences, you can invite us, and we can come over to the Philippines to do this presentation, or maybe we can do joint and joint.
Madam, I am interested with your invitation. Only the expense, no? That I will incur.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Do you offer
Let me look for.
sponsorship for that?
Okay. I think the expense is not that. I think for those from Philippines, I think you will be able to afford. It's not that expensive here.
Okay, we'll try.
Yeah.
Thank you, Madam. You're so great. I am
Thank you
amazed
very
with
much
all those thoughts
for your
that you
kind
have.
words.
Okay, you're always welcome, Madam. You're great.
Thank you. Uh, Truly, may I know if I can present my data analysis in tables and how the implication reflects the abstract? Okay. If I can present my data analysis in, no, when you are putting down your, now let me think. It depends on your data analysis as well, your result and finding, okay? But even if you include it in the table, you also need to, the question is, may I know if I can present my data analysis in tables and how the implication reflects the abstract, okay? Now, the first one is whether I can present my data analysis in tables. Whether it's the presentation of the result itself or analysis, you must present it in text, okay? The first one definitely in text. But if you think that tables or graphic can, right, illustrate your analysis clearer, yes, you can use tables, figures, graphic, and everything, okay? Right. Now, the second one, how the implication reflects the abstract. I don't understand what you mean. How the implication reflects the abstract. Okay, now let me see. Cholik, can you please clarify your question again? Now let me see. Yeah. Okay, another one. I'm really interested in conducting research, especially in teaching, but I'm not an undergraduate or postgraduate student, but a teacher in the classroom. You can still do that. I feel like I'm not related to doing research. How can I fulfill my interest? Thank you. You can still do that. Action research is one that you can try on, even though I cannot include it, this one, unfortunately, because it's only on the writing, not the research methodology itself. Okay, but you can still do your research. Okay, if you try different methods of teaching, whether it impact your student performance or things like that, that is how you can carry out some kind of action research. You do not need to be an undergraduate or postgraduate student. Okay, there are so many teachers who carry out research in their classroom as well. Every day, whatever, I would say that every day when teachers are teaching, we are carrying out some kind of research all the time because we have different students, different attitudes. And if we go into the classroom, enter the classroom, sometime in the morning or sometime in the afternoon, and the motivation and concentration differ. In such a case, we may need to change, right, our approach or method to make sure that students listen to us, pay attention to, and active, right, and grasp whatever we try to teach them. So in such a case, we play around with, right, student psychology and the way that we conduct our lesson and everything. So in a way, we are always doing that, except that we are not reporting what we had done. Okay. I think before, right, we have that journal. What is that? We normally get it from American Embassy.
Forum, teaching forum.
Huh? Teaching forum, yes. This is what, normally
Yes.
teachers, right? Teachers are the one who submit it. And I think quite a lot of teachers from our country, used to submit papers. And I have seen some of them. Okay. So I think you can do that now. Let me just. Okay, do you have any recommended books to do action research? Yes, there are. No. I haven't. I think I can send. Let me just try to dig through my resources. If I can find some or link or something like that, I can send it to Teacher Edison so that she can share with you. Action research. Abstract and implications are totally different, okay? Abstract is the summary of your paper itself within the limited word limit, 250 words. Implication is, right, how, your finding of the, how your finding of your, or the result of your research can be, applied to different areas. Okay. Now, okay. Is there any more questions? I'm just looking at them. Hope that any more? One new message. Okay.
Actually, there's a question, but I think I have missed it because of the internet connection, I was in and out. There's a comment from Tony. I want to know more clearly between abstract and implication. I think you have already answered it, but sorry, okay,
Yes,
I missed it because I was out because of
it's
because
okay.
the net was it dropped.
Yes. I'm just looking at whether there's anything that I miss out. Uh,
Yeah, so teachers and researchers, please feel free to have your mic on and talk to us directly. If we have missed any of your questions and comments, please do understand because there's a fluctuation of the internet connectivity here. So please feel free. And
okay, now action research, okay. I need to note it down.
yeah, okay, and someone is asking if we have sent the documents and statistics books. I think we are going to send all again to you, to all of you. Yes. Yeah, depending on the internet connectivity, we will send them out to you. Yes, definitely. Yes.
Sometimes the files are so big. Even
Yeah.
for me, when I send, I think we need to send the link only because
Yes.
attachment file is very big.
No,
So I
links
think,
are okay. I think links are okay. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Do you have any more to say? Yeah.
Someone is waiting.
Yeah. And this is the end of the year. And we are wishing you a very Merry Christmas to you all and a Happy New Year. And I think Teacher Miat, Dr. Miat Nizato has some words of thanks to tell us to Dr. Kiki on her excellent, outstanding research writing presentations.
Thank you very much, Teacher A. Yeah. So we have a lot of knowledge, and I hope all of you get, some knowledgeable ideas and information when you are doing research, and also in progress. So you will have new ideas to add in as well. Yeah. And also all the participants. Yeah. Thank you very much for attending this webinar and from different places. Yeah, I hope you will enjoy it. And then Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to you all. Yeah, see you next year. Thank you.
Thank you so very much.